September 24th, 2022. Like I was saying, I need to take time off here and there more than I used to because, like I said, for various reasons, like I say this every video, that I'm going to keep saying this for a while, that I have to do this because the truth is there's less to discover, to debunk, because I've already debunked so much. There's less for me to discover, and it's harder to discover it. Well, I wouldn't say it's harder to discover it. It's actually easier. It's just there's less to discover. It's not always harder though, but generally it's harder. And also, pretty much I just like I was saying, I have depression. I have because if this religion that I've been talking about in here is true, I have to follow its orders that I set for myself with it. It's my own religion. It's depressing, but also because of my own unique life conditions, as I've talked about, not in great detail, and as I've said, not really necessary for me to talk about them on this channel. This isn't a blog. This is just me debunking major world religions and bringing up things here and there to help support that cause, as well as prove God exists. So, but anyway. Oh, and just of course to try to transform the world through all of this. But yeah. So this is something I've addressed many times on my channel. This is a big thing. This is like one of the biggest pillars of Christianity. The theory of moral obligation. The theory of morality, of course, which I've talked about in great detail on this channel. Morality, I've talked about obligation, I've talked about moral obligation. I've talked about hierarchies, how you could apply hierarchies to the theory of moral obligation and vice versa. But one thing I did not do is to not go truly in depth as much as I could for why the Christian notion that God would not have the moral obligation to help his creation is completely false. I mean, I went into depth, but not as in depth as I can now. So now I'm going to give some more, what I would call some more, even greater, more convincing evidence that it's a bad notion. Okay, so so it starts off with the question. It should start off and boil down to a question of what is morality, of course, what is obligation. What is moral obligation? Because moral obligation, when you combine morality with obligation, obviously. Okay, so and I've already talked about what morality is. Pretty much everybody understands the concept. Pretty much everybody understands the concept of obligation and a moral obligation, but it's always better to start off breaking it down, because piece by piece, because if you don't deconstruct it like such in this format, then people will start to twist my words and people will start to misinterpret the meaning of morality. That's just, I've explained in great detail why that is, and I've given examples on my channel many times of this kind of thing happening with all kinds of phenomenon in social issues. But of course morality is no different of one of them. Okay, so morality, according to the Google definition, you can look up any definition you want, but the central popular definition that has always been popular for many thousands of years is that basically the concept is about, like I've been saying, it's the pursuit of what is right and what is just. and it's not the pursuit of subjective of this of it's not necessarily the pursuit of a subjective right or justice, because the subjective right or justice could be not right, and it could be just subjective and not actually objectively right. That's why I say that morality is the pursuit of objective justice, unless there's some other definition where it can just be the pursuit of any kind of justice. But to make this easier, it's better to just call, this is what the definition that most people use is, just that it's the pursuit of what is actually justice, the objective justice, not the opinion, not just any, random opinion. And okay, so what is obligation? Well, I mean, an act or course of action to which a person is morally or legally bound, a duty or commitment. So it's basically what you have to do, but some people think it just means, a lot of neurotypicals just think it means, and I used to think this, that it just means it's what you have to do. It's not really it's not really about what you, I mean, let's see, it says that it's something you're morally or legally bound to. That doesn't mean that, if you're legally bound to it, doesn't mean it's justice, but if you're morally bound to it, it is. So it's kind of broad, honestly, but either way, the point is, moral obligation is what it's what you have to do in order to it's basically what you have to do in order to do what is justice or what is just. Or you could at least say that it is what you have to do to pursue, what you have to pursue to do, and what you have to try to do in order to do what is actually right. Either or, whichever way you want to spin it, those are both perfectly acceptable definitions of it. And if that's the case, then I don't see any reason to believe that the contrary could be true about my argument for God having a moral obligation to actually, help his creation. The Christian argument goes something like, well, the reason God doesn't have a moral obligation to help his creation is because apparently it presupposes that if there were a hierarchy, right, as I've talked about, but in the spiritual hierarchy, God was at the top, then that means that he has no one to he is obliged to help, which the so-called evidence they give is that if you have someone above you, then you have in a hierarchy, then you have the moral obligation, and you have a moral obligation to others. But if you have no one above you, then in a hierarchy, then within that hierarchy you have nobody you have a moral obligation to. And it's saying that if you're in the top of a hierarchy, you have no one you have a moral obligation to, and that could be applied to any hierarchy. Well, I'm not saying I don't think it says that applies to every hierarchy, but it at least says that applies to the spiritual hierarchy of existence. And which is completely irrational, of course, considering that, as I've talked about on my channel about hierarchies and the true spiritual hierarchy of reality, this couldn't be the case. It would contradict all the things I was talking about in that video. Okay, so like I said, I was talking about it not long ago. Where is it? 2 weeks ago, the definitive spiritual religious hierarchy of reality. Check it out. One of my longest videos, but Yeah. So basically, check that out if you want to understand how this connects, how this has to do with what I'm talking about in this video. And it has a lot of good supporting evidence for my argument in this video. But basically what I'm trying to do is make this even more obvious that, that video wasn't really about me trying to prove that God has a moral obligation as much as it was me trying to, break down and deconstruct the levels of the spiritual hierarchy of existence and some of the operations within each level. But anyway, bottom line is, like I was saying, back to what I was saying, there's no way that God does not have a moral obligation to us, because like I said before, that's like saying that, just because, it's like saying that if there's no one better than me, then I don't have any sort of, then justice does not apply to me, and I don't have to, I'm not, it's like saying that if I don't do what is right, it's fine, basically. It's like saying that if I don't do justice, it's fine because there's no one better than me. But that's completely narcissistic. That's exactly what that's how a narcissist thinks about things. The narcissist tries to justify their irrational evil by saying that because no one's better than me, which is already an irrational presupposition, they then go on to say, even take it further and say, well, because no one's better than me, that means I really should not do what is right. I don't have to do what is good because there is no one better than me. But that does not make sense mathematically. It does not make sense logically, because it doesn't matter how good you are, because at the end of the day, you're only as good as justice says you are, and justice indicates that you are. You're only as good as justice would allow you to be, and you cannot ignore justice. You cannot be beyond justice and just you could be beyond justice, but if you were beyond justice, then you'd be it wouldn't be in such a way that you'd be above the law, or someone where you could do whatever you want and it would be nothing wrong with whatever you're doing. It just would never work. So the same logic applies to God. So to say that God is so great that it's and the other thing is that the Christians presuppose that God is his attributes and that he is justice. There's a verse saying that if he's justice, then of course they'll just say, oh, well, if he's justice, then of course, and he's not beyond himself. Well, if he's not beyond himself and he is justice, then how do you explain him? It's like, if he's not beyond justice, but he is justice, then that's like saying that, justice doesn't apply to him. But how so? Because then, it's like saying if you are a thing, that thing that you are does not apply to you in any way or in any sense. That just doesn't follow. So, even by the logic of the Bible, justice applies to God. But of course, Christians will say, yes, justice does apply to God, but they'll say that he's so great that he has no moral obligation. He has no obligation to justice, or he doesn't. It's just so retarded. I mean, literally. If what I was saying was true, then yes, it would just be so retarded. So, It's mind-numbingly stupid. It's well, I mean, seriously, it's like, because honestly, like, think of any hierarchy, right? Like I was talking about, the one at the top. It's like saying that you transcended the concept of justice, like, but that doesn't even make sense. That's like paradoxical. So they're basically saying God is a paradox there, but then later you tell them paradoxes exist in the Bible, and they'll say, "Well, you don't know what we're talking about. We know what we're reading. You don't." And they're very stupid. But seriously, I mean, in all seriousness, right? I mean, seriously, I mean, God is not like, it's not like, like, for example, like, think of levels in a video game. It's like, it's the same thing with hierarchies, like, because there's levels that you're a rank in a game, and then you're like, or in a modern game, and you're like, oh, well, there's a hierarchy because of the rank. There's a hierarchy to the rankings, right? And there is. It's not like, a justice system within the ranking system doesn't apply when you're at the top. It still applies to the one at the top or the one at the max level, right? It still applies. It's just that, if anything, the only difference is that it applies in a very different way for the one at the top, but it's still there. It can never be removed, because that's not the kind of thing that justice is, or that moral obligation is. It's not something that is removed for entities. It's something that is, it's just about justice itself. It's like, but they'll just come up with all kinds of ways to twist your words and misconstrue things to try to justify the retarded delusions of their psychopathic intentions. Like, they're so crazy and stupid. But literally, I mean, that's neurotypicals, but seriously, I've been saying this for so long. I mean, look at this. Look how long this. So, how long has this been around? Since 2021. Look at that. We're almost in 2023. Just a few months away. What is it? September. Near the end of September. How many months? October, November, December, January. Just 4 months. And this thing will have been around for 2 years. It's crazy. Only 18 subscribers. I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna demand I get a flood of subscribers. I'm just saying the fact that it took this long for me to realize these things. To report them is sad, and I'm saying it's also sad that, despite them being clear debunks of all major world religions, people still take so long to absorb the information, to actually process what's being said. It's like centuries have gone by. But literally, I mean, don't know what else to say. Okay, so, yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so basically, the only other thing I can say is to think of it like this. Like I said, based on the Google definition, if you're morally obligated to do a thing, then it's what you have to do in order to do what is right. But if you say that God has no more obligations, then it's like saying that God doesn't have to do anything to do what is right. And that just makes no logical sense. And if it were true, then he'd have to be able to perform paradoxes, like I've been saying all along. So, there you go. It just makes no sense. The Bible is not infallible. It is trash, like I've been saying for so long. Well, I hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe. I'm out.